And we are live.
And we are live.
Welcome. This is Spoken Openness, episode 34.
34.
And we've got a quote here. We'll start with the quote as per usual. And here, this is from a Mr. Karl Pilkington.
Pilkaingaton.
Pilkington.
Okay.
Karl Pilkington. Some people say Karl Pilkington, but I think that they are...
Yeah, I think that's the wrong pronunciation. And that's disrespecting his legacy.
It's very disrespectful.
The
quote is, quote, "I find that if you just talk, your mouth comes up with stuff." I'll say it again. I find that if you just talk, your mouth comes up with stuff.
Who is he talking to? Who's you?
I think it's the universal you. He's saying...
oh, right. Yes.
He's specifically talking about us. Yeah, I feel like that's pretty
that
true.
Feels, yeah, that
what
feels special. Like he's talking to me, like he had me in mind when he wrote that. At least partially.
That's kind of like the Mr.Answer Guy vibe. It's just like if you just start talking, sometimes you don't really know what you're going to say. Because I feel like there's a correlation here with freestyling.
Yeah, improv.
Improv, where you'll surprise yourself, or you'll find out what's happening as it's happening, because you're not considering, distilling, figuring out how you would like to present something.
You're not self-conscious? Could we say that? You're not analyzing yourself on the spot? You're allowing thought to be reproduced as is?
Do you think you can be conscious of what's happening without analyzing?
I don't, no.
Whoa, okay.
I mean, you could be, I guess, aware of sensations and patterns in your body and your psyche, but that's not really analysis, is it?
Right, but would you say consciousness, if you're conscious of something, it implies the analysis?
I don't know.
Because I think
I don't know.
Because
depends how we get to define these words we're using.
Right. Because I think you can be doing improv and you can be conscious. Like you can be watching what's happening. Like let's say you're just pure form. You're doing improv. Like within.
And you're talking about a very skilled comedian or actor. Yeah.
Or like a group, like an improv. You're doing an improv game with a bunch of people. You can be coming up with stuff and you're conscious of it. You could even be aware and considering, like not analyzing or overthinking in a way that makes you question, but you can be aware of what's happening and you can kind of be laughing inside. I mean, sometimes you can start laughing out loud because you're aware of the situation, but at the same time, you're saying stuff and you're doing stuff that you're not pre-designing.
Yeah.
And
I guess that happens with training.
You can learn that. Or
you can learn that.
Strengthen that muscle.
But I think that at the beginning of that learning curve, ego or our pattern recognizing system will try to put name on anything, on everything, put tags, categorize, and then draw a lot of different judgment or
Mm-hmm.
layers of analysis to all of those tags, and this is happening
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like a computer processing
Really
data
fast.
on the background but yeah, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
But you can notice that, for example, if you in actors in
Mm-hmm.
theater mostly, that's I in my opinion where you can
Mm-hmm.
see when you can see if the actor is taking a lot of time to how can I put this, make decisions,
Mm-hmm.
or is the actor just, I mean, you can see the action happening in the moment versus, or even
Mm-hmm.
thoughts happening with eye movement and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
facial expressions.
Or worse, if
I
they
guess, yeah.
are, if you see eye movement as they're searching for the dialogue. Yeah.
Yes, yes, you can see the difference there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the most spontaneous moments are the, I guess, what's considered the impulses,
When you don't,
natural
I mean,
impulse.
you don't judge the impulse, you let it
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. But would you
Yeah,
say that in a conversation, Mr. Answer Guy just talking, is that impulse? Is it following impulses?
I think so. I think you go with the
Mm,
gut. I think when you prepare yourself for Mr. Answer Guy, and
right.
then you say, okay,
You
this is
become a
it.
you become a vessel that's ready
Vessel.
for that purpose.
Yes. And there's
Yeah.
no doubt. There you shouldn't try to what is it? Yeah, it's not a test. It's
Mm-hmm,
just an
mm-hmm,
answer.
mm-hmm.
You don't
It's an
qualify it.
exploration
Yes.
without judgment.
Without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So that
And
has
the
to do
and
with
the
instinct.
and the mechanism by which you do that is impulse and instinctual, in a sense of let it guide you as you go. Uh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I mean there could be an argument to explore here, and we've done this before, if it's instinct or intuition.
Mm-hmm.
But we could say, in this case, we could say both. I think
Mm-hmm.
so. If
Mm-hmm.
you're in
I
an
think you.
improv game in verbal fluency, I
Mm-hmm.
guess rapping as well, you
Mm-hmm.
go with your instinct, but then there's
Mm-hmm.
also the intuition of the lyrical aspect of it and how
Mm-hmm.
you're used to linking words that rhyme, etc. Right? So
Mm-hmm. In time. Mm-hmm. And
inside time patterns.
mm-hmm. Is that there's instinct, there's impulse, there's your knowledge base, your
All your references.
experience, and hopefully all those memories. Uh, Hopefully those things will be called upon
Yes.
by your directed will. You're like, this is what I'm doing, and then the resources will emerge without needing to call upon them directly and too
Yeah.
in a too organized way. And
That's the
then,
openness, right?
hmm,
The openness
that is the
aspect
openness.
of the
Hmm.
allowing yourself to be a vessel, as you pointed
Hmm.
out, and
Being non.
opening your communication channel to whatever it is that you can speak at the moment.
Hmm. That's like a non-discriminate resource acquisition. You're saying like I have resources in my mind, and I will not discriminate by choosing which ones I will focus on or use, and
Yes.
then hopefully you're totally open to using whatever.
Hopefully.
Hmm.
But what is that? What is that first step? Is that an intention? Is that
The first step is the
a
hardest.
thought? Just, I guess, the intention. Because if sometimes if we don't put the other on the spot to practice Mr. Answer Guy, we don't arrive at what Mr. Answer Guy has pointed before, or it takes us longer. So there's a call to action, but you don't really need that call to action. You can do that for yourself with an intention to,
But you kind
I
of need to
guess, I don't know.
I think you definitely need to make it a like an activity.
Okay, or
I think maybe
a
we could just
manifestation, like either
yeah.
speak out loud or write it down.
Because I think there's a way of talking about this kind of thing, like what we do with these conversations, like the openness aspect of it, where hopefully you're able to, and something we strive to do is to cultivate a lot of these things, the openness and drawing from different things without judgment. We try to cultivate these things in general in conversation, but kind of the maximal application or the place where it's like the biggest like workout for this is in Mr. Answer Guy, which is a very like it's like a session. You have to Mr. Answer Guy session. It's like this is an activity. I've decided to jump into this, like do a Mr. Answer Guy session here. We have a
Yeah.
topic kind of that I want to direct the my processes towards, my resources, and then you kind of go for it. You jump in. Um, yeah, and I think that you're coming up with stuff there that might not have emerged in the conversation if you didn't. Perhaps some of it would have slowly, but I think in that session, it
Yeah.
becomes like a deeper exploration.
I agree. And I also think that the fact that there's an observer,
Mm-hmm.
both you and the camera
Mm-hmm.
and the
And the other
potential
person.
audience, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that changes things
For
in a
sure.
cognitive level, in a stakes level, like what are the stakes
Mm-hmm.
for the individual to summon all of the mental strength or intellectual strength, and also, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, the openness aspect of that,
Mm-hmm.
as we were talking about, to produce something new with speech. And I don't know, just linking it back to the quote,
Mm-hmm.
that makes me think that it's kind of like giving people permission to come up with new things. And
Mm-hmm.
all you have to do is start talking. All you have to do
Mm-hmm.
is begin speech. And that also brings me to the old, what is it, like open writing exercises that I
Mm-hmm. Free
think
writing.
free writing.
Mm-hmm.
Carla Jung was very Mr.
Mm.
Carl Jung.
Oh,
He was very
yes.
fond of those exercises
Yeah, thinking
and
that you
getting people
can
in
have
touch with your
unconscious,
subconscious.
yeah,
Yes,
subconscious, yes.
recognizing those patterns, etc.
Hmm.
And I guess same with speech. You
Hmm.
just begin talking, and there will be a magical element to that.
I think more so with
That's
speech,
bigger, more so with speech. I agree.
especially if you are interacting with somebody else or an audience because there's feedback. If you're doing it like free writing for yourself, I guess unless you are sharing that all the time and
Unless you
people
were
are
recording that.
responding. But in speech, it's like you once it's out there and someone else is
Yes,
listening, and then they're gonna
on the spot, for
have a
sure.
response to it, and it will generate something new collectively, which I think is also very interesting. But I think
Yeah.
the effort of Mr. Answer Guy mode session is not in the Like, because we can say, oh, it's just you just open your mouth and you start talking, which I think it is. But the difficult part is like letting go of the judgment, and like the hard part is in the it's also the hard part because you don't know what you're going to say, and you need to have the trust or the openness or the strength really to
Mm-hmm.
say whatever is happening. And that can be, that's why people, that's the Flight of the Concords thing when they're doing like the rap, and he's, I think, the hip hopopotamus, and he's rapping, and then he kind of slows down and he's like, sometimes when I freestyle I lose confidence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like
Yeah.
because it's like if you're going out on a limb and you're just like going out there and you don't know, you don't have anything prepared, it can be scary,
Very
embarrassing,
scary.
potentially.
Yes. Yes. And so what happens when inspiration is not there? When you're not able to connect the dots, when you're
Mm-hmm.
not able to recognize any patterns and begin the exploration. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you're in what is it, like speech block.
Mm-hmm. But I think,
And yeah, yeah.
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I just think if you set up the environment, like
That
we
was my
have,
my question.
yes.
Like, what can you do to prevent speech block from happening?
And when you were saying that, I was just thinking,
Mm-hmm.
why does that not? Why doesn't it seem more like that when we have conversations? What is it about it? And I think part of it is in this idea that both of us know what's going on. So we know that, like, if you are Mr. Answer Guy, I know that you don't know anything about what you're talking about, or at least not like crazy amounts. I know that you're just coming up with stuff. And often
Yeah.
when I like throw Mr. Answer Guy in your court, it's because I don't want to, or because or because I failed to come up with something. So I'm like, look, like I want you to give it a shot because like
Yes. Yes.
maybe even like in that moment I don't want to take the risk. So then if you are, it's like anything that comes from it is valuable. And if it's a
Mm-hmm.
failure, then
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, that's fine because I wasn't even going to attempt it. So
Right, because
uh,
I think at the moment you're attempting to formulate the question, and that's taking a lot of
mhm.
mental space, mental RAM, and
Right,
so
Mr. Question Guy is
Mr.
necessary for Mr.
Question Guy cannot become Mr. Answer Guy in a second.
Right.
So if you're Mr. Question Guy, that takes a lot of energy, and then you need
Hmm.
to throw the question out there as soon as possible, so that a fresh mind can be
Hmm.
like, okay, I'm 100% charged. Let me become Mr. Answer Guy, and then I'll try to nail it.
Yeah, and it's a different mindset. It's a totally different job. It's a different
Hmm.
activity. I think we haven't explored as much Mr. Question Guy than we have explored Mr. Answer Guy.
I think
Because the
so.
quote at the beginning is very much Mr. Answer Guy, which we've talked about. But I think that's true. It's not always the case that Mr. Question Guy is all the time, sometimes, but not all the time. It's that they're like unable to or not willing to take the risk, or it's that their mindset is like, look, I'm busy formulating the question. It seems like I've adopted the role of question creation
Yes.
guy. And it's like, we can switch. It's not that I need to do question guy, but it's like right now my mindset seems to be this, and I've created there's a result somewhat, and I've tried to formulate it, and here it is. And then that requires the cause and effect. That's the cause, and now we need the effect response of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
answer guy. And so the job is then to just cultivate the openness, the space, and then start talking, and then just, yeah,
Yeah.
and flowing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then almost question guy then switches job to become facilitating, uh, directing the Mr. Answer
like
Guy
almost like an
direction.
admin, or like
Kind of, yeah.
like exploration and continuity mode when you
Uh-huh.
found a wave,
Mm-hmm.
but then having both Mr. Question Guy and Answer Guy
Mm-hmm.
to as modalities or
Mm-hmm.
tools that you can
Mm-hmm.
use if you need to advance in a direction of an answer, or if you
Mm-hmm.
need more profoundness or a better formulated question, or if
Mm-hmm.
you're in an exploration but suddenly you feel like maybe you hit a wall, maybe you
Yeah.
hit some sort of block, and then
Mm-hmm.
you can use Mr. Question Guy to reformulate the
Mm-hmm.
path.
And also, Mr. Question Guy has to, like, his job is to listen very carefully,
Yeah.
because when you're Answer Guy, you're kind of, you're in the zone of like, I'm just coming up with stuff, I don't really know,
Production.
like, and your production, just production. But you'll say something that maybe you don't really recognize, either it's contradictory or it's like a new thought that hasn't emerged in the conversation yet. Maybe it is very valuable, and the question guy can be like, okay, well, maybe that's not exactly the answer, but there's like a element of that that could be explored or unpacked more, and there's like a value, there's some valuable something, there's something in there. And
Yeah.
maybe that is just a feeling that gets generated from Mr. Question Guy when he becomes Mr. Listen Guy. And there's that mutual directing and cultivating and
Yeah,
exploring.
yeah. And Mr. Question Guy can also be directing the conversation in a way like linking subjects.
Hmm.
So I can say like, well, do you think this is related to X, Y, or C? And then
Hmm.
that could open up. That's just a simple question. Is this related to this other thing? How can we make a connection here? That
Hmm.
simple question can be like a 2 hour wave.
Hmm. To find the network that is embedded in your ideas are coming up, and then
Yeah,
where are all the connections to the other things that have been discussed, to other things that haven't been discussed, to new waves that could be generated from those connections or from the lack of connections. Like, hey, this
yeah.
seems like it should be connected to a lot of things, but nothing is ringing a bell, or nothing seems to be connected here. Why is that? Is there, have we not explored this as deeply, or is it because it doesn't make sense and it really doesn't require further exploration? Was it a mistake? Was it just idiotic? Did it make no sense?
Are we walking in circles?
Are we walking in circles?
Because
Yeah.
we can't really trust memory,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like sometimes Mr. Answer Guy has to work twice on the same thing, and
Mm-hmm.
that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Sometimes you'll have different insights. Sometimes it'll be the same insight, and you
Mm-hmm.
when it happens, you remember you've encountered that insight before, but
Mm-hmm.
somehow you forgot.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say situational memory, but I don't think that's
Or
like.
situational amnesia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Sometimes
I'm
we
sure
want
we've
to
had the
forget
same.
things.
I'm sure we've had similar sessions of talking about something specific, and
Yeah.
we'll totally forget insights. I think that's mostly the case. I don't remember half of the insights. I think, and
Yeah.
and right now, emerging from subconscious is remembering a conversation that we had about the most important thing about intake, information diet, is the ability to remind yourself of the insights, and if you're not pulling them up
Yeah.
again, they're pointless. And that's a huge part of what makes things valuable, is in your habit of like pulling them up again and remembering the generative roadmap of how they emerged. So not just like the
Right.
sentence,
Yes,
but
yes.
in the connections that that from which it emerged that made it so profound. Otherwise, you're like, you could be
Exactly.
in a
How
different
that
mindset and be like, well, this
relates.
isn't profound anymore. And now I'm
Yes.
just reciting an insight from before.
Now it just feels like a empty quote. But at the time,
Mm-hmm.
it was the most important thing, the most
Yeah.
important pattern at the
This is
moment.
changing my life. This is paradigm
Yes.
shift. This is. Mm-hmm.
But then amnesia, but or
Mm-hmm.
I guess
Mr. Forget.
Mr. Forget Guy. Yes, what's the deal with that? Do you think that there's a relation between um, how good it feels to encounter the pattern
Hmm.
and to that feeling that, oh, now I know,
Mm-hmm.
and then do we forget so that we can have the same feeling again over the same piece of info? That's, I don't know.
Hmm. If I if I were to Mr. Answer Guy in one way, I would say maybe it's that if it's so profound that it feels like you'd have to change your life, then you would forget about it because you'd have to change your life, and that's hard.
Also, so that's one aspect. For you, it's to take action on that piece of info would
Yeah.
be painful, and
Yeah.
also to forget and then encounter again
Yeah.
would feel nice
Yeah, and
again.
maybe it becomes I don't actually want to change my life. I just want to remember and then have the motivational impulse, and that feels great.
Oof. This is so important right now. This is
Are we having a
how did
paradigm
we get
shift right
here?
now that we'll forget
Yes,
about and then we can have it again in a
yes,
couple weeks?
and it is. Yeah, if we talk about this tomorrow, it'll be like, yes, obviously. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the building up towards this part of the conversation, it feels it feels like we did some work, we walked through the maze, and
Mm-hmm.
now we're here, and this is valuable.
It is valuable, I think, for sure.
Yes.
And I think it would be useful in some way to populate the the uses of the different elements of the system, to populate them with the purpose and the approach and the of Mr. Answer Guy, Mr. Question Guy, generating for ourselves some sort of framework so that, and maybe I'm wrong here, but if do you think in this case that clarification on sort of the functions of these different roles, if they're clarified and the process is dialed in more, then it will become more effective because in its usage and application, then we will um, be able to recognize sort of maybe what role is being played at what moment, and then assume the responsibilities really
Yeah.
of that kind of perspective or of that
The
job
process,
without saying
the
job, but the function.
implications.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we could map this out
Hmm.
and try to be more specific in all the aspects play that
Mm-hmm.
are at play.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's comforting. It's sometimes I push myself too hard to be Mr. Answer Guy most days
Yeah.
or all the time every day if I can.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
What?
want
Mm-hmm.
we like that's something I'm looking for clarity, walk away from doubt, try to be specific, have plans, know what you want, know where you're going.
Mm-hmm. And a large part of the
Yeah.
podcast is to express what you think by just formulating sentences and seeing what you think. So it is kind of like the main operation mode is to
Yes.
just try to be truthful about I think this is the way that I think about it, or this is the way that I could formulate it best right now. And
Yeah, I
that is
agree.
kind of like Mr. Answer Guy mode, sort of. But and I think we could argue that after the discussion today that assuming the different roles in different times will be a larger net positive on your understanding of what you think while exploring these subjects, then
Yeah.
that but by assuming these roles in different situations, it has a larger net positive than just trying to consistently be Mr. Answer Guy in some way.
Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
agree with that. And I must say, since we started this new rhythm of casts, and I've found myself writing more consistently on my journal,
Mm-hmm.
and
Nice.
I think that helps a lot with the amnesia um, subject.
Because writing down memory, different
And
kinds of memory.
sometimes, like trying to visit some of those old diaries
Mm-hmm.
has been also life changing. So
Nice.
it's that same thing where you wrote it down 3 years ago because you were having an emotional impact over
Uh-huh.
this sentence, phrase,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, piece of information,
Mm-hmm.
and mostly going back to stuff I wrote like a long time ago. I have some books from like, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
let's say like 7 years ago, 8, 10 years ago, and I don't understand why I forget those things.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
And also sometimes
It's
it
yeah.
is rewarding to see something where you're like, oh wow, I thought this insight was like fresh and profound, but I have kept it around, and it is something that has been incorporated into my worldview and something that I
Yeah.
remember. And sometimes you do get among mostly the things that you forgot or whatever, you're like, oh wow, that seemed to really impact me. Sometimes you're like, well, yeah, that's obvious to me now because
Yeah.
it
Now it's
was,
become a
yeah,
part of the
it was
my
integrated.
whole behavior. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Integration.
Mm.
So you think you forget because the intellectual patterns and the
Right.
exact wording of things,
Yeah, you forget
you
the
actually
sentences.
you forget the sentences. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. But the
You acted
info,
out.
you
Maybe
act it
you
out, it
acted
becomes
out.
action, or maybe it becomes so integrated as a fundamental reality, or something that you hold to be true, that it just
Yeah.
like it spreads in the other structures of your mind as like an element of it, so
Mm-hmm.
that it's a small piece, sort of like some people believe that memory in the mind works by like holographic memory,
Yeah.
like that ideas are multiplied in some sort of like holographic mirroring. And I think in this instance it could be like that, where there's like some fundamental thing that applies to many different patterns of thinking and different topics and whatever, that if you hold
Yeah.
it, then there's some system in our mind that can like holographically replicate itself and embed it within the other
Mm-hmm.
patterns and frameworks, so that
That
you
is
don't have
very, very,
you
yeah,
don't have to always
fascinating.
like, okay, you don't always have to make all the connections manually with
Hmm.
every single.
You can't have
You
all
can't.
connections present at all times, and
Mm-hmm.
also maybe we forget connections so that we can revisit them and make them stronger,
Mm-hmm.
or take into account different aspects of that subject. Because if
Mm-hmm.
we had perfect memory, we would, I guess we would mostly be very confident
Yeah.
about our stored information, and we
Yeah.
would be like, I have so much information that why do I need more? We
Yeah.
would be know-it-alls.
Certainty.
So,
Yeah.
but
Then
yeah,
you would never need the modality of question guy or answer guy, and
exactly.
and I
There would
think
be no dance.
one of the things we've discovered through these castes is the emergence of these roles because they've had benefit and seem to be an integral part of a mutually agreed upon attempt of understanding in the moment,
Yeah.
using language, aka conversation.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Great
That's it.
convo, man.
I think we can continue down
Mm-hmm.
these definitions and try to boil them down to what makes them to the essential.
Yeah.
And maybe we're just scratching the surface here.
Mm-hmm. I think so too, and I think there'll be a point maybe where we think we've over analyzed or we've made it too specific, or maybe we'll find the both and about this process or the insight. But until then, I think it will be great to continue the attempt to find all of those specifics and find the
Yeah.
line of, okay, maybe now we're getting a little bit too specific and this is going too far, and then we can pull back and maybe we'll find a cool medium of how this whole system might work and how we can integrate it into our uh, casts
Mm-hmm.
better, and how we can maybe use it in our own
Yeah.
lives
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
ways.
I
Cool,
also
man.
I love that even though we're using words like systems and
Mm-hmm.
mapping out the variables, so
Mm-hmm.
it feels non-organic, but it's like we've found this by organically just talking, just having
Mm-hmm.
conversations, and now we're actually recognizing patterns
Mm-hmm.
from our own experience. So I
Totally.
think it doesn't get more organic than that.
That's really cool. Super cool. It's cool to see some sort of thing be born out of not trying to do anything, or having a direction, but not
Yeah, yeah.
orchestrating it too much.
And it's not that hard. Like going back to the quote,
Yeah.
all you have to do is, begin talking.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
And I also think a further exploration, just to kind of end my thoughts, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
to wrap up a little bit, is another exploration after the sort of clarifying of the functional aspects of this quote unquote system would be the necessary elements of an environment, like maybe doing the environment exploration into how do
Yeah.
you facilitate and foster a an environment from which this system can emerge without fear or so on and so forth. Kind of some of the
Yeah.
things we talked about. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, just having the time. I guess we're good at that. Like allowing ourselves to have the time for a 30, 45, or an hour long conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and have no distractions during that time.
Mm-hmm.
That that sets up the mood for,
Mm-hmm.
like, we're safely exploring conversation for this long,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
whatever
And then
happens.
when it's done, we just yell. We just yell,
Yeah,
and
that this is what people don't know.
they don't know.
When casts just finish, it goes
Yeah,
crazy.
it gets crazy. Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
rebound effect.
yeah. What happens?
All
Or we
right,
just
man.
meditate for an hour,
Yeah,
right?
that would be good.
Actually, we people don't know, but we've been doing that since first episode. Every
Yeah.
time an episode ends, we just go into deep 2 hour
Yep.
meditation.
There's
Yep.
actually been a few weeks. People don't know about it. We've meditated
Hmm.
from one cast to the start of the next cast.
And fasted as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was like a
A week
3 week
long.
fast. No, why are we saying this?
All right, man.
All
Great
right,
convo.
brother.
Look forward
Yeah.
to continuing these discussions on 35.
35. All right. See you in the
Nice.
next one.
All right.
Peace.
Have a good one. Peace.
Same.